Hi there. Welcome to the Financial Advantage podcast. We are powered by the Wells Funding Group. This is Dennis Wells, and I'm super excited to be joined today with Lawrence Dunning, professional realtor, investor out of working in the Illinois and Indiana markets. Lawrence, welcome to the program today.
I appreciate you, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you get started in the real estate business?
So I actually come from a financial background, and I made a lot of money trading, and I made a lot of mistakes that only a young man can make. And then I was thinking about what to do to give me make some smart financial decisions for my future. And one of my best friends was a broker. He actually owns my real estate company I work with in Chicago. And he said, "Why don't you buy a building?" So he ended up helping me buy a building back in 2013, a big commercial building. And then I realized that I thought I was a very smart guy. I came from the finance world. I was very curious. I was always a big reader. But somehow the idea of investing in real estate just, I never really, it seemed to have slipped me by. All the world that I was in, the financial world, was stocks, bonds, cash. They didn't really talk about real estate investing. And then after I bought the building, I became really convinced of that model, the real estate model. I started to do more research. I found out things like a vast majority of millionaires own vast real estate holdings because of all the tax benefits and the tax write-offs, and how most millionaires have different forms of income, one of them being real estate income. So I started just to really find out more about this. I became very passionate about an area that was a complete weakness in my knowledge. And then I decided I changed careers because the whole I was a pit trader, Chicago Board of Trade. That whole business was dying. And I was like, I don't want to be a 40-year-old ex-pit trader with no other skills. So I left the pit in my 30s, and then I slowly transitioned to real estate. And then I was first an investor. And I was like, if I'm going to be an investor, I want to be on the front line. I want to know everything what's going on. I want to meet developers. I want to have access to a much wider network. So I got my license and I started working with clients. And that's kind of how it began. So it was kind of cool that a lot of people get their license. They don't even own the property they live in. And then slowly they kind of build their career. I came into it a bit later in my career as an investor first, which was kind of unique. And it's been great because I think the big advice that I always give to people, Dennis, is I think you should specialize. You should find a niche, because most people know a few different brokers, but you need to have a niche that differentiates yourself, and you need to have a certain area that you're very, very knowledgeable in. So naturally, it became for me just working with investors and multi-units, because that was kind of the space that I was in myself.
Okay. So you started off with there's a lot first in there to unpack, because a lot of fascinating things to discuss. But so you started off with a commercial building. Do you still have that? Have you added commercial, or are you also doing the multi-unit residential?
So I do still have it. The thing with commercial is it's great when it's great, because the tenants take care of everything inside the units and they might stay there for 5 years, 10 years. The only issue is once you have one leave, it can be hard to find, especially if it's a unique space, hard to find another one. So I do still have it. One of my big tenants, finally, they left after 10 years. They outgrew the space, which kind of sucks. So I'm dealing with that now. My business model now that I really prefer is just residential units. I think if you price them well and you market them well, you can always get those rented. You're going to have a lot less vacancy than unique kind of commercial spots. So I do still do commercial business. I don't have any more commercial buildings, and for me, that was a good lesson. It's good when it's good, but then you're going to have bigger vacancy between tenants. So whereas dealing with people that are renting the units that they live in, they're going to have more maintenance issues and things like that, which of course you can outsource, but you're always going to be able to find quick turnover, never going to have lasting vacancy between tenants.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about the tax advantages of investing in real estate. Obviously, you have the vast knowledge with, the financial instruments, but you mentioned the difference between that and real estate, especially when it relates to taxes.
Yeah, I think that it's so. I talk to so many investors, Dennis, and they're all so interested in the front end numbers. But for most people, if you had a company when you were young, or you made a whole bunch of money in crypto and you don't have much income, but you want to travel the world and enjoy life, then maybe the cash flow is more important. But that's a tiny segment of people I deal with. The vast majority of people looking to buy property, they work like you and I. They pay taxes every year. So for them, I always tell them, don't focus on the cash flow. Cash flow is great. You're going to get cash flow in time. You're going to pay down the loans, so you're going to be paying that. Yeah, your equity will increase in the building, and it will appreciate over time. They're the three forms that people focus on. But for me, the fourth one, the tax benefits, is so much more important because you might not see it as cash in your pocket, but if you're saving 20, 30 grand per property on your back end when you do your taxes, that's gonna compound over time. So I think it's so easy to focus on the front end cash flow numbers, and we forget about the back end tax benefits. And for most people buying that are working, it's the tax benefits they should be most focused on, especially people like doctors and lawyers that make a good income and pay exorbitant tax bills. They're the ones that should all have a few buildings just to save on the tax write-offs. Even if the building, even if they held it for 10 years and it didn't make them a penny in cash flow, they'll be so far ahead than if they didn't get it.
Yeah, totally agree. And actually, yeah, had coffee with my the CPA that I work with and recommend today, and we were just talking about different things. And I was talking about how you can, have an HSA, put money into that, set up an HSA with a company that allows you to take that money and invest it in, the stock market or whatever, and increase that. And he's like, yeah, I've got a client that actually buys real estate out of his HSA. He of course, over the course of time, had built up enough, in there where he could use that as a down payment. Now, not only did the money go in there tax free, not only is it growing tax free, but you're able to utilize, those tax advantage strategies with investment property to lower, your other taxes. And then, yeah, eventually he'll sell it. The proceeds will go back in the HSA, but then, medical costs will certainly be more than what they are today because they've never gone down.
Yeah.
And you're withdraw, anything that you spend medically is tax free. So it's, there are a lot of great strategies around that a lot of people I think don't really understand or think through.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I don't know about you, Dennis, but for me, money should be about trying to buy back your time and be a bit more efficient with your life and not do things you don't want to do. So if we can just make, smart financial decisions when we're a bit younger and carry them forward, our future selves are going to be so grateful we did it. So just things like that, just trying to put a bit of effort into learning about other ways you can offset taxes and things like that. It's very easy. One thing I realized when I was young is I didn't know what I didn't know. And now I'm a bit older and wiser. I'm way more aware. I know so much more than when I was young, but I feel like I'm more curious and there's more gaps in my knowledge because I'm just more aware of the things that I don't know. So I think there's one mistake that a lot of people make is they think that making money is the same as keeping money. And I learned in my 20s the hard way that they're two very different skills. Making money is about being good at something that people pay you for, whether it's, trading, investing, providing some kind of sales service. But if it's one revenue stream and times change, then that could end. But also, just keeping money is a completely different set of skills to making money. And we live in an inflationary environment where, unfortunately, if you're one of those people, that hypothetical people that makes a bunch of money and keeps it in, cash under your mattress, every year you're going to be losing money. So you have to invest in assets that are going to be inflationary protective too. And that's another thing about real estate is both the rents and the property price will inflate as other costs inflate. So you got that inflation protection, which I think is going to be very important in the decades to come as well.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I love the curiosity and the fact that even though you've been doing this for a while and you've learned a lot, part of that knowledge is, hey, there's so much more to learn, and so many different ways to take advantage of investing in real estate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if there's something to do with loans, I would talk to you. You're going to know 10 times more than me about that. I think one of the biggest problems that people have, and I see this in real estate a lot, is where they're insecure or scared of saying I don't know. And I feel like every single day I'll tell someone, let me get back to you on that. And even if it's something like, I own a condo in a building I rent downtown. I lived in that building for 15 years. I know it back to front. But I couldn't tell you what the last two-bedroom there sold because I haven't checked recently. So like
Mhm.
things like that, just the data's out there. You just have to do the research or find someone that does. but don't be afraid of saying I don't know or finding someone that knows better because that's their area of expertise. And I think we live in a world where everyone pretends to be somewhere they're not or know more than they do. And there's one thing that I know after a lifetime of study, and that's what Socrates said is if there's one thing I know, it's that I don't know anything. You know, it's like the more you know, the more you realize that there's knowledge out there. And I think that's a really good habit. Like I have a 4-year-old son and I want to teach him. There's certain things that I think he should just do on a daily basis or a weekly basis for the rest of his life. And one of
Yeah.
them is just always be seeking out people that know things you don't know and reading and learning and investing in yourself because that'll pay dividends later on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We have a grandson that's almost 2, and he's not quite. He could probably talk, but I think he's waiting until he can make complete sentences. But just seeing, he'll see something and he gets fixed on it, and then the light bulb is just going on that, oh, there's something that, I want to know more about that. I want to figure that out. And I think unfortunately we lose some of that as we age, and
Oh,
maybe it's, I think you mentioned insecurity or feeling like, oh, I don't want to be like I don't know anything, whereas kids are just like they're sponges. They know they don't really know a whole lot. They're not supposed to know a whole lot. And realistically, we're not either, because we're going to know a lot about what we're into at the moment. But if we want to expand and grow, we have to at least admit that there's things that I don't know yet, but there are people out there that do.
exactly. And listen, my son is he's not quite 4, he's turning 4 and he's obsessed with flags. And I've been very lucky. I've always prized traveling and I'm from Europe and my dad was a retired pilot. So I grew up traveling. I've been very blessed with how much I've traveled. And my 4-year-old son knows some flags I don't know. He's like, what's this flag? It was Bahrain, these random things. So I can learn from my 4-year-olds. That just goes to show you just how much knowledge there is out there. But yeah, you're right. Kids are so naturally curious. And I think if we can keep some of that curiosity in life, I think that'll be a really valuable thing to have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you talk a lot about travel. Obviously, you're from England, and what are some of the things that you've learned in your travels and to different places that have shaped who you are and how you look at the world?
Well, I'll say the one thing that I love about America, and I just got my citizenship last year. Yeah, about
Nice.
last year. And I'm a real proud immigrant because I love the American mentality of the world's out there for your taking if you put the effort in. They have a spirit of entrepreneurship and freedom to just to build great things. I think that's in the air, and I think that's really incredible because a lot of countries don't have that, and a lot of Americans don't realize how people from all over the world look to America as this beacon of opportunity and this beacon of free speech and opportunity. And sometimes, like we live in, we're in a weird stage right now where a lot of people are attacking free speech, and they don't realize, especially people in America, that the world looks to America. There's 196 countries. They all look to America for these things. So that's something that I prize very highly. I
Mhm.
remember when I did some hiking with my dad in Zanzibar, in Tanzania, and we were taking off, and we were just flying real low in this little plane over a beach, and you saw all these kids barefoot playing soccer with a self-made soccer ball, and they were just smiling and laughing and joking in the sun. And you go to a park in the US and people are on their phones and parents are disconnected
Mm.
with their kids and just one thing I get from travel to countries, especially where the average salary is a lot less and the people have a lot less material things, is they seem a lot more connected with each other, with nature, just outside doing things. And that's something I'm really trying to do with my son is just get outside more and just be a bit more connected and not stuck with technology. And it's hard because you know what it's like with our job. We're connected to screens a lot, so it's a constant battle to give yourself breaks from that and just connect with people and just get off staring at screens, which is not it's harder. It's easier said than done, in our industry.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. But yeah, I've been you know working on that as well as, like, how to, just putting the phone away for meals, and
Yes.
having actual conversations with people, and learning what's going on. And yeah, I think that's super important. And I love the you know looking at it as at America as a land of opportunity. And I think that gets, because those of us who were born here maybe are in the midst of it and we don't like see it. that like the way someone else would. But I would love that old, Jim Rohn quote of nobody's saying if I could just make it to Poland, I would have it made.
Yes,
It's like
yes,
everybody's wanting
yes,
to come
certainly.
here. And it's like if you just open your eyes for all the opportunities, and I mean, there's no perfect place, but the the opportunities that you have here, if you just open your eyes, if you're willing to ask, if you're willing to learn, willing to grow, literally are limitless.
Dennis, I'm so glad you said that because you're right. There is no perfect place. Every country is going to have its struggles. And by focusing on the negatives and burning American flags, it's a very um, uneducated, kind of shallow approach because if there was a better country, I would be trying to get there and I'm not. So it's, yeah, every country has problems. And I will say it does seem like a lot of immigrants are realizing that more than people that are born here. And I think about all the developers I work with. It's so interesting. So just off the top of my head, I have these are my clients that I've worked with, for many sales that do a lot of building in Chicago. One is from Georgia, one is Mexican, one is Romanian. Actually, two are Romanian. So you can see that there's a lot of the immigrant mentality. They come over here and they just see all this opportunity and they're just so excited by it. And a lot of these guys were on job sites when they were 12 years old. They really came from the bottom all the way up to now they're general contractors. They're building multi-units, ground up construction, but they came from nothing. They came from countries with less opportunity and they really value what they have here. And I just think it's such I find that a very inspiring message, just seeing that work ethic and that mentality, because everything in life, we can always focus on the negative. We can focus on the negative in our culture. We can focus on the negative. Our coffee wasn't hot enough today. We can focus on the negative. Our wife wasn't too in a great mood this morning. Or we can focus on the positives. We're alive, we're healthy. Even though interest rates are a bit higher than they were 3 years ago, they seem to be coming down. And times are good. COVID is no longer shut the whole economy down. Things
Right.
are okay. With all the problems we have and all the fear over the election in a month, life is going to go on. It doesn't matter who wins the presidency. It doesn't matter who's your local governor. Your the city governor. Life goes on, and there's always opportunities, no matter what the environment you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one thing that we can learn from immigrants that come in is that you know anything worthwhile does take work. But what I see you're talking about, and is that people come in, they're like, but if I do the kind of work here, I can actually get ahead, as opposed to,
Yes.
I'm going to be working this hard or harder, where I'm coming from and just barely getting by. And
Yeah.
and I think that makes a huge difference, and and
Dennis,
something to think
if
about for sure.
I can just give you a story on that, I remember when I was in Cuba when I was a young man, and I was doing some. I was a boxer, and they have the best boxing program in the world in Cuba. They have the most Olympians. It's incredible. So I went there. I wanted to train there for a month, and I went there with a couple of friends from England because we could go with our British passports because back then they weren't allowing Americans to go in. And one night we're out, we're in the line to go out to a bar, and there was a girl started chatting to us. Oh, what are you doing? Where are you from? And she was quite tall, and she said, if I work, I think she was a teacher, and she said that they pay the local, because it was a communist country, they pay us so little that I could work all year as a teacher, or what she does is she goes to Italy for a few weeks in the summer and she teaches volleyball and she makes more in a few weeks working in Italy than she done after she pays for her flights and a hotel and everything. Then she would work for a whole year working in Cuba, in Havana. And it's just like, so when the system is against you like that, if I lived in a place like that, I wouldn't be motivated. I would just do the minimum I could, and I would just, get by and then hang out with my friends, and I wouldn't have any motivation. So the fact that we live in a place where we have motivation is where we have opportunity, I think is so important. And then just to bring it back to real estate, we're in a very interesting time. I'd love to hear your opinion, but I think this environment right now, talking at the end of October 2024, it reminds me of when we came out of the 2020 COVID shutdowns and 2021. By the time the summer came, it was just bidding wars and everyone was fighting over inventory because you'd had 12 to 18 months with people sitting at home that wanted to do something and they couldn't do it, and then suddenly when they could do it, it was like the floodgates were opening. I think it's going to be the same because interest rates have done the same thing. So for every 1% that rates come down, you have 5 million more American buyers that can afford to buy that right now they can't. So I think what's going to happen now, we've seen the Feds finally signs for low interest rates. And even though last week the economic numbers were not great, I think all the signs are pointing to inflation coming down. I think we're going to see lower rates and we're going to see just an absolute crazy 2025. So a lot of people in the real estate industry have been very slow this year. I think enjoy it, enjoy time with your family, because we are going to be losing our mind next year, and it's going to be a huge, huge opportunity to do very well. And I think anyone that has the courage to buy now with higher interest rates, I just bought an investment property and my rate sucked, but I know that when I can refinance it, hopefully, in spring, summer next year, I think I'm going to have a lot of equity. So I think the prices will be higher then. So I think you have to play that game where they say you marry the building, but you're only dating the interest rate and you can refinance the interest rate. I think that's the environment we're in, where if you have a bit of courage and you can pull the trigger at a higher rate for an investment that doesn't look great today, you can be very happy you did in 6 to 12 months.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And one of the things that I'm doing for our clients, do a lot of residential, but depending on their loan amount, because we get paid by the investor for the loan, depending on the loan amount, it's either a no point, no cost refinance, so they're just rebuilding their escrow, or
Awesome.
maybe it is a no point, low cost, just what maybe they're paying some of their title work and their escrows, but really to have a break even. I mean, if there's no points, no cost, you're breaking even immediately, because you're just prepaying some of your escrows, you're gonna get that back from your servicer. But even if your break even is like 3 or 4 months, it makes a ton of sense. And but you're absolutely right, that every time, like you said, every time interest rates go down 1%, there's 5 million more people that are able to buy, which is only going to push up the prices. I think one of the things that professional realtors should be looking at now is prepping for that when that's going to happen. And part of that, with our loan consultation with our clients, we're talking with them about different strategies around that, and and really helping them see the value of working with a professional buyer's agent as well. So looking at, hey, if this is a house you really want and you have the resources, especially like if you're a move up buyer and you can do an appraisal gap where you're going above the list price and you're guaranteeing that they'll at least get $10,000 above what the house appraises for or whatever. I think that with the buyer's agent compensation agreement coming here now, that can be a great tool for a move up buyer. First I would say, hey, pay off, restructure your debt. If you have any debt, get that squared away. Put less down on the house. But then if it's a competitive environment, hey, let's do an appraisal gap. And by the way, I'm paying for my buyer's agent. So then that's setting your offer, add to that we send people through underwriting, so they're already underwriting approved. Now you're competing with cash, but you're coming in with an offer that might actually be better than a cash offer.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad you said that, because I think it comes down to what we started this conversation with, is getting the knowledge and the right people in place. And I see that there's this, for people that aren't familiar with it, there was a new ruling where there was some lawsuits about commissions, and it doesn't change most transactions, because most transactions, I'm much more on the selling side. I always pay the buyer's agent because I want to work with a professional who's going to make the deal easy, smooth, and we're actually going to get to the closing line. But a lot of people are thinking, well, I can just do it myself and I'll try and save some money. I can tell you, having worked with agents that are really bad, or for sale by owners, or things like that, they always leave money on the table because they think they're going to save money, but actually they're not going to market the building properly, or the unit properly. They're not going to negotiate properly, and they're going to end up cost themselves money. And I've done that on the buyer side, where I've put some low offers in, waiting for a counter, and the sellers have just accepted it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I could have got you a lot more for this sale, but they just don't know any better. So I think, just again, comes back to knowing what you don't know and going with someone who knows what they're doing, they're a professional, and just listen to their advice. You're probably going to be better off, and it's going to be a lot less stressful for you as well.
Yeah, I always compare it to working on my own car. It's
Yes.
like I can, I can't really, but say I could work on my own car, or tried to work on my own car. It would take me 10 times as long, cost me 5 times as much. as if I just took it to a mechanic. And, and then you deal with all the frustration that's
Mhm.
involved with, because I don't know what I'm doing and
Yes.
I don't do this every day. And, you know, and that's just part of it. I mean, there's, like you're saying there, nobody knows what they don't know. Most people are unfamiliar totally with a negotiating process, and and don't realize the the liabilities and the pitfalls that are associated with buying and selling real estate. You don't want to get into something where oh, I'm not going to order title work. Okay, well now you're leaving yourself vulnerable to any other you know claim that someone else has to the house, for example. And so
Yes.
there's nobody's advocating spending money frivolously, but there's nothing wrong with investing good money to save tens of thousands of dollars.
And I'll give an analogy with myself. I had a bad experience when I first got into real estate. I had a bad experience with a property management company. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it myself. And I did it myself for a long time and caused myself all this needless stress because I didn't trust that someone could do it better than me. And as soon as I found I was getting married 7 years ago, and I was like, I don't want to deal with the stress on my honeymoon. I was getting married out of the country. So I found this property manager who was great, and I'm still with him to this day because he does such a good job, and he's probably saved me a whole bunch of money because he has good contacts with the vendors, and it's so it saved me stress, it saved me time, it saved me money most likely, and it was just that stubbornness that I had. Well, I think I can do it better, or I had a bad experience. So it's always a good reminder that just because I can sweep a floor at McDonald's better than the cleaners there doesn't mean that I should be striving to do that. So try and be efficient with your time, use your skills where they're going to be most highly prized. So it's a very good reminder. Work with professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And and don't be afraid, like like you're saying, don't be afraid to spend money to save time, because we can always make
Yes.
more money. It's like we just can't get more time. And like, you know, yeah, and again, professional in the management, you know, side of it, like you said, not only do they have all those connections, you're not getting, that phone call in the middle of the night that, oh, something's busted. It's like they get the
It's
call. And
awful.
so, there's value there that you're, not necessarily, I mean, you are paying for, but you're not necessarily realizing how much value it is until you realize one day, hey, I haven't gotten any of those calls.
That's so true. I remember sitting on my sofa late at night and had these female tenants. They were young. They were like college kids, and they were calling, crying because there was a leak and they didn't know what to do. And I'm thinking, oh, do I really have to deal with this? It's 11:40 or whatever the time was. And yeah, that is to not have to deal with that is priceless, Dennis.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so what are some goals that you have for the next 3 to 5 years in your business?
So I actually want to set up a closed-end real estate development fund. I think there's so much money, and I work with some really good developers who are fantastic, and I work with some who I think they're not the best and they cut corners and somehow they still seem to do really well in a pretty difficult environment. So I've been doing some development projects myself the last few years, and so far they've gone very well. And I would really like to pool some money together where I can just have a bit more access to things, jumping on things quickly, and doing developments in house, and then maybe keeping them for a year before because if you do a quick flip, your profits are limited. But if you can do a rehab or a new construction building, get it completely turnkey, wait a year or two, collect the rents, wait for the area slowly to change, and then sell it, that you have a lot more upside. So I think that's my future is setting up some fund and just growing my real estate team as well. I've got people in Indiana, I've got people in Chicago, and I think it's always looking forward and trying to grow and expand and push myself.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to someone who's maybe a new agent or someone looking to get into the real estate or investing business?
Um, I think the most important thing is I get this a lot where people have been in the business 6 months and they say to me, "Oh, I want to get to where you are, next year." And it would be great if we could all cut 10 years off our learning. But unfortunately, some things do take time. So I think one thing when I was young is I wanted success very quickly. And I got all the success in my 20s financially. And then my 30s were a tough decade because I'd gone from up here to down here. And so humans are happiest when we're improving. So we want to try to be a bit patient and spread out our wins And I think any new agent, I think you're going to get paid for what you give, what the expertise you give. So really focus on growing that. Read everything you can, find mentors, ask 100 questions, take crappy clients just to learn different areas and learn aspects of the business. And just try not to do things that will make you money. I mean, it's going to make you money in the long term, but on the short term, try to focus on skill acquisition and building contacts and getting good database. I think that's going to be the key. I think that'll not only make you money down the road, make you more money, but it'll make you money for a whole career. So I think just being a bit patient and investing yourself as opposed to, hey, I'm going to close this deal and make my commission and then go on to the next deal, where you're not really investing in yourself too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I read a book called The Gap and the Gain, and it, when you were talking about that, it reminded me a lot where our tendency is to compare ourselves with someone who is, you know, been in the business or doing what we've been doing longer than what we have. And the point of the book was, what you need to do is compare yourself with where you were 6 months
Yes.
ago, one year ago. Because again, anybody who's really good at anything that they do, they spend a lot of time in it, and
Yes,
you just
exactly.
can't. We live in a microwave type world where everything happens now, and that's just not how growth works. And
No. And
so, if we take that perspective of, well, I would like to be over here, and I have some, ambition and motivation, but I can see where I've come, and where I've come in the last 6 months has been tremendous. It kind of keeps us from being discouraged in the midst of it, and like you're saying, being patient,
yeah.
taking that long-term perspective.
And Dennis, if I can just say, we live in a crazy world where I didn't even know this until fairly recently, but there's a whole industry and a whole business around people taking like fake photographs for their Instagram on a lifestyle that they don't have. So like, you can rent fake plane, like prop planes for photos as if it's your private plane, and the same with cars. And there's a whole industry with that. And so it's very hard for people that, especially young in their career, that are starting out, because they think, man, there's so many people that are so far ahead of me. But the reality is there isn't. It's a lot of people pretending to be people they're not. So don't worry about other people's races. Everyone's on different timelines. Worry about your own
Right.
race. And I love what you said about comparing yourself to, how were you last year? You had this much business last year, and maybe you went to the gym 3 times a week. This year you're up 20% and you're going to the gym 4 times a week. That's amazing. Compare yourself to your past self, not people online that half the time or more than half the time are not even real.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. That whole comparison is a thief of joy is very true. And like you said, I mean, I think happens a lot of times is people are comparing themselves with, someone else's best day, or
Yes.
not even their best day, something that they paid somebody,
Attend.
a
Yeah.
couple $100 to get some props. It's like, it's not even real,
Yes,
but
exactly.
and it drives us nuts because, oh, we don't have what they have. Well, they don't have it either, or
Exactly.
or even if it is something, that's real, it doesn't mean that every day for people,
Yes.
'cause every day is not like that
Exactly.
for anybody. It's life is, there's ups and downs and cycles for sure.
100%. I think that's such a good example. And also, I know Jim Carrey said it. He said, I wish everyone would get rich and famous to realize that it doesn't make you happy. And there was someone, I think Will Smith, he wrote an autobiography saying basically the same thing. When he was young and broke, at least he had like a dream. And then when he became wealthy and famous, he was still miserable. He's like, what do I have now? So you hear those stories, and it's a good reminder that don't look at other people that might have things you want and think it's going to be the answer to all your problems. If you're poor and miserable and you get a lot of money, you're probably going to be wealthy and miserable. And if you're poor and happy and you focus on the important things in life, you're probably going to, and you have money, you make money, you're probably going to be happy and wealthy. So really,
Yeah,
I think that was one of my big problems when I was young, is I focused on ticking the boxes, and I'm thinking if I achieve these goals, I'll be happy. And now I'm a bit older and wiser. I think I'm happy and I still have goals. I'm not there, but I'm going to be happy on the way to getting them. And even if I don't get them, I'm going to be happy on the way trying to get them. It's just
yeah,
changing that mindset, I think, is so important.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Making it about, the progress, more than the the destination. Because yeah,
Yes.
if you get, if you achieve your goals, then you're like, well, now what? But you know if you're working towards, a bigger vision of yourself, that can always keep expanding.
Yes. Exactly, it does. That's human nature, right? It's like that's why a lot of these lottery winners are more miserable 6 months after they win the lottery than they were before, is because they feel great for a few days or a few weeks, and then they don't grow as it's not like they're making money and evolving as a person. They're just getting this lump sum of cash, and a
Yep.
lot of time it leads to negative effects. So that's so true.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Lawrence, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to carry on this conversation with you about investing and real estate and travel and everything. What is the best way for someone to get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
Oh, I appreciate that, Dennis. I'm pretty easy to find. Lawrence Dunning on LinkedIn is probably the best bet. I post a lot of my listings and I'm easy to find and I respond to all the messages. So you can find me there.
All right, I love it. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. Thanks for listening. We would love it if you would like and subscribe. And of course, forward this episode to 2 or 3 friends that are interested in real estate and investing and having a growth mindset like we've been discussing here today. Thank you all for joining us. Again, this is the Financial Advantage powered by the Wells Funding Group. You can reach us at 219-230-8400. Lawrence, thanks again for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, Dennis. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Bye.